Hey friends, Kevin Dairaghi. Welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show. Today, our guest is Jeremy Vlasich. Before we get into our conversation with Jeremy, here are just a quick couple things. One, I'm going to say thank you to our vendors, right? We had Red Maples, so Jason Hudson, doing great stuff in the general contracting world. He does my rehabs, does all that wonderful, beautiful stuff to give me some good products. Thank you to Adam Droege and Complete Property Solutions. Adam, you are doing fantastic with your business. He is in one of the top growing businesses out there in the nation. So, Adam, you're doing a great job. Thank you for all that you do and supporting us here at the Kevin Dairaghi Show. We also have Lois Mans, Farmers Insurance. She covers all my assets. She really does a great job making sure that our investments, right, our houses are taken care of. They have the proper insurance and protection as we go across everything. And Greg Mans with Upright Constructions. If you're going to do it upright. So he takes care of all the roofs and sidings and windows and doors and all those fun things on our houses. So guys, thank you so much to those. But also in our conversation here with Jeremy, watch this. He's like over 21 years of experience in and out of real estate, totally underlining real estate is a tool. It could be used for good or for bad, right? So the real estate world and working in and all this stuff actually took away his first wife, right? That balance just kind of consumed it. But he did find a Marianne, his second wife, and is highly happy there. But really, real estate can drain your soul. He talks about this. The burnout is real. So, guys, he's got some great quotes, some good information, and great faith. So let's get into our conversation with Jeremy. Awesome. So here today is my friend Jeremy Vlasich. Jeremy, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great today. Doing well. Because I'm on your show and I get to talk with you. That's why I'm doing great.
Because I'm here on time, Kevin. That's why. That's why I'm doing
Yeah,
so good.
that's correct. Let's not talk about that.
That's awesome. So, Jeremy, it is awesome to have you on our show today. It is great to know. Well, one, I know you, right? I know your story.
Yeah.
But for those of you that don't know this, in some of our previous episodes, we've talked with Sean McCloskey, we talked with Brian Schroeder, we've talked with Chad Wilson. All these people, Jeremy has a profound effect on, right? Either helping them get into real estate, guiding them through the process, being an underling, like working with or collaborating with. And part of my time, Jeremy was actually a mentor of mine going through some of the process. And I think, Jeremy, at one of the things that I talked at, I think I did the hallway talk that you were in the
Yeah.
audience for. And part of that was actually inspired with some of the stuff that I heard you do in some of the home appointments. So it is actually really cool to run appointments with other people because it helps you, I guess, define your craft or your way of presenting stuff. So I want to say to you, Jeremy, thank you for being basically a good guy and being involved in all these different people's lives and interconnected and all the stuff. So thank you for me and also all the other people out there.
Absolutely.
All that said, Jeremy, how and why did you get into real estate?
That's a good question. I've been in real estate for almost 21 years. So when I did not, I am a reluctant real estate person. I
Reluctant?
Yes, I had a lot of people in my family that did real estate, and I remember one of my aunts, and she was a huge producer in a very small town in Illinois. She would do over 100 deals a year, like 110 was her average. Now, she did get both sides almost all the time in
Hey,
traditional real estate, where she listed and sold the property. But I mean, this was a small town of a few thousand people, and that's a huge volume, right? She dominated. And she did have that sweet brown jacket at Century 21 and the
ah,
gold jacket. So, but one of the things I saw her do, this is a true story. We were at a funeral and she took a call on a real estate transaction or a client or answered the phone or whatever she was doing. And myself, I looked at that and I thought, what? That sucks. And she was working 80, 90 hours a week. Now she made a ton of money and always had nice stuff. So there's a lure of that. I was very reluctant. In fact, I thought, man, I would never want to do that. She's always working nights and weekends. Well, I think I had a transitional moment because I had a early mentor tell me, they said, if you work for somebody and you're good, you're underpaid. He said, if you work for yourself and you're good, you get paid exactly what you're worth. Well, that made a lasting impression, and it probably more than anything opened my eyes. I always was interested in investing. I always liked construction, and I always liked breaking things down. So, looking at different things and seeing different ways to do things. So, I did start looking into some different options there, and investment real estate came up, and someone told me, "Oh no, I don't. I only work." Well, the quote investor was a well experienced, long term investor. So they said, "Oh, I work like 10 to 3 or 4, and then I'm done. And I might, I go to the lake, I do all these different things, I make all this money." As a young impressionable person, even though I was reluctant on real estate, I'm going to be honest. The reason I got into real estate was the money, the clout, and the supposed free schedule of doing whatever I wanted. I think all of that is attainable in real estate. However, I did not follow that path. I worked too much. I had no flexible schedule. Now I did make a lot of money, and that there are perks to that, but there were some things that I did wrong. I mean, it was a and these are, you look at people, and we even mentioned, we were talking a little bit beforehand about just how people have this perfect life, their Facebook life, their everything looks amazing. You don't know what they did to get there. You don't know what they sacrificed to get there. You don't know the relationships that were killed, the drain on your soul that it took to get there. I don't know anybody in real estate that did not give up a portion of their soul, me included, at different times. Now, hopefully, if you're listening to this, maybe that won't be you, or maybe it will change your path, because I think that's really important. Why did you really get into it? And again, I was reluctant on the front end, and I think I got in it for the wrong reasons, but slowly over time, I hopefully have gone a new path or a new direction.
You have been very good about recreating yourself and all your different your things, but you have dipped your toe
Yeah.
in this space, and then you get out, you dip your toe back in, and I'll tell you, man, real estate is a massive tool, right? It is a massive
Yeah.
tool. But like what you're saying, it's a sword. Like it could give you all this freedom and time this and work life balance, but it also could consume you. It's just how you use the tool.
And you're 100% right, because you look at a pair of scissors. Scissors are a tool. It can help you cut things, but it also could kill someone. I mean, that's the reality of anything we do. Uh, I agree 100% with what you're saying.
We have this, I think, Kevin Dairaghi backslash tools. We have this snapshot where think of life, and there's three major relationships, right? Relationship with self, relationship with others, and relationship with things. Each one of those is broken down into like four more categories, right? So you get this idea, and there's a test there, you can see where you're at. But life is never like a perfect circle, right? It's never a perfect wheel, no matter how well we try it. But we have this push and pulls, right? If you're really focusing on your career and money, right? American success is basically titles and money is how we determine success in America now, right? But that's just one little relationship over here. How is your family life? How is your, your love life, right? How are your friends? How is your health and wellness? And I mean, we have enough history here that we know people that, I mean, how many investors have committed suicide? How many people have gotten big, but, when they're on top, now they're out of shape, out of, grossly over, like where you're like, you kind of missed it, man. You made one category, but would you call that success? Now you have diabetes and all these other things, and, you can't really enjoy anything you've done.
I agree with that, and I'm no different. I mean, even with all my success, I compromised a relationship with my wife, or at the time my wife. She's my ex-wife now. Sacrifices that you look back on, working 80 hours has maybe some benefit on the financial side, but it also is, that's an unhealthy, unbalanced life. And that is what I probably see more people do, is have a non-balance in their life. And then they wonder why they're getting those results. I mean, it's based on everything you do in your life, as you were mentioning. It's, finances, it's health, it's relationships. There's so many pieces to it. And if you're exclusively focused on one part, you are lacking on the other things that are important.
And that's how this balance gets out. And it's fine to do sprints, right? Hey, I really need to put my head down and work on this, right? I had high cholesterol. All right, I'm working more on my diet, stuff like that. Like, okay, my fast food era is over. I got to start thinking about food prepping and healthier alternatives, right? So it's pros and cons that happen when you get a little bit older. I don't know if you've hit any of those, but so.
But let me ask you this: how much better do you feel when you've made those changes
So
physically?
I mean, I have this. I'm limiting how much red meat I'm eating, right? And I'm actually drastically. I love beer, Jeremy. I do. That's part
Yeah.
of going to Rala, part of the ambience of doing that. But now I give myself one day a month. I'll drink beer, and then I don't drink beer because some of the stuff just it's not good for me anymore. But I also don't like the cold turkey, that moderation or knowing that I have that, get out of jail free card. Like it
Yeah.
gives me more like, oh, I could just save this day for a different time, so it gives me that it's okay every once in a while, it's not an all or none thing. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I wake up ready to go. I'm not hungover as much. There's not as much gut issues. Like it's, hey, here we go. Did you go through a similar thing?
I have. You know what? Actually, just a few years ago, I was really sick. And when I
Oh,
say really sick, there were days that were tough to get out of bed. I'd have convulsions in my legs or have issues. When I went to the doctors, honestly, they told me that they probably thought I had MS, and I even had a brain scan. And thank God I did not have any of those. And for anybody that has that, I am immensely sorry, because I have researched that after thinking that was potentially what was going on, and just wow, what that would have been such a life changer. I ended up finding out, though, speaking about beer, I like beer as well. However, I have a severe gluten allergy, essentially celiac. So guess what? They put gluten definitely in beer, and they put it in about everything else, from water to almost anything. They put wheat or gluten in almost everything, it seems like. And it was amazing. I cut that out. And when I initially moved to St. Louis, and then today I lost 50 pounds, and a lot of that was swelling and my body fighting itself. And that's one of the things too. I did not pay attention early on to my health components. I've always been an athlete, and I was never had to worry about the stuff in the past. The older you get, it is more important, but actually the younger you make those adjustments, it's more lasting and it helps you out more as well. I'd highly recommend anybody that is doing business that they add that health component, and even do things like figure out if you have allergies, do a little more of the homeopathic type stuff so that you are performing at your highest level. Professional athletes do that, so why do you not think we should do that as professional investors or professional business owners? So I do think that's incredibly important.
good. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Did you read The Miracle Morning?
I have, yeah.
So the Savers idea,
Yep.
SAVERS,
Yep.
sitting in silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, and journaling, right? Reading and journaling is scribing, Savers with the S. But that, like, just those, what you're saying is like, it's still that stuff, but it's also for your mind and your heart. It's just like, hey, mentally get prepared, read books so you're always learning, like keep all these things moving. Like my wife's really good about this. Like we have a strong push towards like eating proteins, right? The chickens and the meats and the rice. We're not anti bread or anything like that, but we try to eat the healthier breads, or at least show the kids like, hey, I know you like the sugary cereals, but let's have eggs instead. Or, maybe you could have that one time a week instead of every day. Like it sneaks in quick. There's a lot of sugar and a lot of just crap that people consume.
Yeah. Plus, it's addictive. Sugar, the more you eat of it, it's like, I've got to have it. It's like crack cocaine or something.
Yeah. Or something. I don't know. Haven't got into that market.
Yeah. Nor
Some
have
of our
I.
houses
Nor
have.
have I. So yeah.
So, Jeremy, we did an episode earlier this year about Eads Bridge, and I converted over to entrepreneur words, right?
Hmm.
Connecting East and West, manifest destiny, right? All the
Yeah.
stuff that comes with Eads Bridge, but really comes down to three parts: dream, forge, and finish. Dream is vision, right? Knowing where am I going, how am I getting there, etc. Finish, right? The last one is a half finished bridge doesn't get you across the river. You got to finish whatever it is you're starting. The middle one, which is where your question comes from, is at the time there's three building materials, right? It was wood, stone, and iron. Those did not have enough strength or capability of spanning the mile bridge that needed to be done for the Eads Bridge, right? The currents and the sand and all the things, right? Iron just wasn't strong enough. So what happened with some heat, adding in additives and taking out impurities, right? Learning healthy habits, they were able to make iron into steel, and steel was able to make this iconic bridge that connects east to west, railroads, commerce, all the things happen right now that they did that work. That idea, I think, is still true for leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, all that stuff. So that said, what are a couple of your forging moments, Jeremy, where you had the heat, you had the pressure, and you basically had to dig in and do some either character development or take a chance on yourself, or not to break into an Alba song, right? Take a chance on me. Anyway,
But we
um,
can. We can. That's fine.
but what is a Jeremy forging moment that going in and after that that kind of changed your course?
You know what? Probably coaching and high level coaching. When I started, I was just doing my own thing, figuring out how to make things work in real estate, and a relationship with God would be the other thing. I'll share this with you. I went to a meeting one time and it was a great meeting and the guy was amazing, but he was asking me some questions and I said, "Oh, I do this, I do that. I have gifts here, I have gifts there." It's all kind of like all about me. And he said something to me that still sits with me. He said, "Really, you think you did all that?" I said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I did all that." And he goes, "I don't think you did. I think God gave you all those gifts. And I think God guided you and gave you that talent." And I said, "Well," I go, "Oh, yeah." And then said something else about me. And he said, "Listen, you can't hold a shit in." He says, "You think you can control the rest of your life?" And I go, "Whoa." And this was from a guy that was definitely religious and Christian. And that was eye opening because that's exactly how he said it to me. But there's truth in that. Like, we can't even control our own bodies. I think but what that really meant to me and what that means is you need help. And your first line of help should be God, in my opinion. You should pray or you should ask God for guidance. The second thing is surrounding yourself with people that, more than likely, I would say, surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like. So hopefully you can get in a group or a coaching mastermind, something like that, where people are better than you. Not saying there aren't benefits to being that better person, but I think, striving for perfection, but modeling other people, and then modeling, actually, I would even go back to modeling what Jesus did. If you really look at scripture and the gospels, yes, Jesus was loving, but he also cried looking at us, he of what we do as humans. But he had total compassion and love. I think if you model Jesus, you model people that are amazing business people, amazing in life. That is, the more you model that stuff, you are going to attain things like that. But remember, we can't control ourselves. Now, that guy that said that, it might have been a little vulgar, but that was kind of a snap into reality that you can't control anything in your life. And that's somewhat true.
I think a word fitly spoken. I mean, there's a couple. I read a bunch of autobiographies and whatnot, and there's moments that sometimes you're like, I don't know why, but like, I know that I am recording this moment in my brain forever. Like, this is one of those
Yeah.
moments of like, something is different today because of this person talking, and I love that stuff. I have a lot
Yeah.
of mentors, and it's just something they say, or maybe it was just an offhand comment, but it was one of those like, oh, like, that's what sticks with you. You can't even hold in your own shit. You think you built this? I mean, it's took around what 1 years or so, like, and now it's going to help the next person. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Who were some of your early coaches, mentors?
You know what? Honestly, one of my best early mentors was very early on was a guy named Dave Beaker, and he's actually a real estate agent. And he was just great. He really talked more about mindset. So when I first got into real estate, he talked a lot about mindset. He talked realities to me. One time I went in and I was doing a little more traditional real estate at that time. And I said, "Oh, Dave, I think they're overpriced on what they want." And it wasn't substantially. And he said, "Jeremy, I know one thing about real estate. You can't sell a listing you don't have." And, he had all these little things that were just so wise. He was actually the one that told me that about if you're working for somebody else and you're good, you're getting, they're getting the benefit, you're underpaid. But he mentioned when you're out in the world like we are here in real estate, you get paid exactly what you're worth. If you're worth a lot, you make a lot. If you're not worth crap, you don't make anything. He was a fantastic early mentor and just got me started and really about mindset because I don't care what aspect of real estate, and really I'd even say business, but primarily real estate, it's tough. I mean, people will tell you things you don't want to hear. They will say things that can be tough. Some people say that's a thick skin that you have to build up over time. I don't know that I like that as much because it sounds like, you're just going in there getting a beating. I think you learn ways to not have those situations come up, but there's a lot of rejection of things and that messes with your mind. So your mind and your focus is incredibly important. Also, I do think Brian Schroeder, I know you mentioned him early on, he was a great mentor of mine. He changed a lot of the ways I thought about things. So there's little things, whether it was Dave or Brian, like Brian told me one time, because I was a reluctant landlord and probably still am, but he repositioned that just a little bit. He said, a lot of people make it about ROIs and about what I bought, what I sold, what's on my tax returns, how I manage the property for performance. And he said, I actually look at this like I am providing a good house for this person to live in, to raise their family, to make them a good person. And when you shift that mindset, I know that's a little mindset shift about, and if you see a common theme in everything I've talked about, it's like, is it me or is it not me? And the older I've gotten, the more I've gotten a relationship with God. It's more about others than me, way more about others and benefiting them. But that's really what Brian was saying when he said, I am providing something for others. That's a different way to look at a rental, to be quite honest. Way different way than what, just running numbers, spreadsheets, everything else, because that's not about a person. And that's more about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to manage it, what my performance will be.
I think we kind of take the same mindset on this, but I love the term servant leader, right? Servant leadership,
Yeah.
etc. Like,
Yep.
how can I be a leader? How can I be a servant? Like, using my influence to be able to help people, which gives me more leadership, which helps them more, which, and then taking that to your houses. Cause I mean, I have rentals I think I have your same like twang towards it. Like, oh, they're just going to break my stuff. And there's plenty of people that do that. Right. But then there's so many good people out there that just
Yeah.
need a place to live. And I fell back in love with creating home ownership. Right. So I even went back to my rentals and I asked a handful of the tenants, like, hey, would you be interested in buying their house? And they're like, oh my God, yes. Kevin, like, is this possible? I'm like, yeah, let's take a look. So it's one of those, sometimes you gotta, put your money where your mouth is. Like, yes, I would get all this value and all that, or I do what I actually believe in, which is, restoring St. Louis. You do that by
Yeah.
people saying, like, get off my grass, like people start extending their boundaries, right? Having that pride in home ownership. So good. So Jeremy, like, you've dipped in real estate, backed out, in, out. You've done that a couple times, right?
Yeah.
What was your process through that time? Like, what was your mindset, or were you only coming back for money? Was there something you wanted to do?
Yeah. No, good question. I look over real estate and I think there was a point in time 100% can tell you one of the reasons I kind of wanted to get out early on is I did have a ton of success, but that also ended in a divorce from my ex-wife. It also ended in when a downturn happened in the market, me feeling like I had chains around my neck, and it caused me to get shingles because of
Oh,
my stress load. I wasn't, in my opinion, was not healthy during that time. And part of the reason I wanted to get out is because I thought the path of getting out was better than staying in for what had happened. We all learn from where we're at, but also where we were from, right? Or where we came from. So seeing all that pain and all that headache, I mean, I still remember my oldest daughter, and when I was little, she would be working all the time at my home office, and she would set up her own little office in the corner. And she was 4 or 5 years old and knew my cell phone number because she heard me recite it so much to other people. Like, these are things that I am not proud of. I mean, I am not proud of that. My younger kids today I don't think they know my cell phone, or they might, but it's a different perspective for sure. So I think part of the reason I would get out, as well as I had a lot of burnout, and that would be my one caution to anybody in real estate. There is no, you just open your door and look outside, look up and down your street. There's opportunity everywhere. And so a lot of us are geared in our mind where we're like, there's opportunity. I've got to go attack it. I've got to go get it. And there's no rest. And I don't care. I will say this from my standpoint, but I don't care what people say. I was thinking about real estate and deals 24/7. I was dreaming about it. And that was too much. And so if you've ever just been exhausted, I mean, even in a physical aspect, like I've run a few marathons, and at the end, you are just freaking exhausted. And after you're done with a marathon, like the next few days or weeks, you don't feel like running again. And that's what happened to me in real estate. I didn't feel like it. And then I looked at everything it costs me, right? There's a cost to everything you do too. They like to package that as a nice little thing in economics and call it opportunity cost. Well, you can call it whatever you want, but there's a cost to everything you do, every decision you make. A lot of that was painful. The cost for me was pain. So that is often why I would take my foot out. Usually what brought me back in, and this is interesting because I've looked over my career, I've had more people tell me things like, Jeremy, I prayed to God for help. I prayed for somebody to save me. I haven't told anybody this, and I mentioned it to one person, and they said, you've got to call Jeremy. I believe God guided people to me so that I could truly help them out. I believe that with my heart. So there were times I was wrote back in, and, I always laugh because I make a joke that it was like Godfather 3, where he says, I want out, but they keep pulling me back in. But that I will say that jokingly, but there is some truth to it. But it was actually God pulling me back in to help people. And I shifted that mindset years ago, probably the last 10 years or so. I've done almost no marketing. People just come to me because of relationships and things I've built over time. But I also believe God is behind that.
yeah. Huge fan. I remember going like, God, man, I'd really like to have, I really want to flip a slab, like not have to deal with a foundation. That sounds great. Sure enough, phone call, it's a slab in Overland. I'm like, too much coincidence to be chance, right?
Yeah.
And I walked through, made my offer. They're like, oh, yeah, this isn't going to work. I'm like, it's going to work, right? When and then sure
Yeah.
enough, they were like, yeah, we'll take it. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
It is funny. Marketing, if you just believe in marketing, like, sure, I guess that's faith in your marketing or that your image is good. But man, I feel like God, like what you said, they could bless anything you do. It could be a social media post. It could be walking into McDonald's. Just a case in point, I walked in this week actually and saw my mom. I saw her car outside of McDonald's. You know how the seniors drink coffee. I stopped
Yeah.
in, said hi. Because I did, one of the people now are calling me about a house that they're need to sell. I'm like, I didn't stop in for marketing. I stopped in to see my mom, and
Yeah.
it's kind of just be open, right?
But you are, I'll tell you what, Kevin, one thing I know about you is you are brilliant at that. People, they know you, they like you, and trust you. And that is why people sell their homes to that or pick that person. Everybody thinks it's price. At times it can be, but it's rarely. And trust me, I've gotten outbid and still got the deal. It's not really about price. It's about know you, trust you, and like you. And you have embodied that better than probably anybody I know, because that also is, you get a lot of referrals on deals, and
Oh yeah.
you would not if you were not the person they knew, they liked, and they trusted.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. I think a lot of that I also though have learned from you because we ran a handful together, and I'll tell you,
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
when you learn that creative financing side, or at least how to offer it, and
Yep.
like in my quote sales pitch, it's more education, right? It's like, hey, here's information. I want you to know what your best decision is. Which one do you want? I can help you here. I can help you here. If you're curious, this is what this looks like, but don't worry about all this other noise. Like which one fits your needs? Switching around,
Yeah.
more like solving their problem, not like, hey, look at me, you know, just the outward to
Yeah.
inward side of it.
100%. Also, people, if they can self actualize the best option for themselves, and especially if you provide that, and it may be something, I mean, I made offer or solutions for people or offers or opportunities for them that I made no money at, and I wasn't even potentially involved in that solution, but it didn't mean that that wasn't a solution for them. And I think, and you're very good at that too, Kevin, providing all the options of what someone can do and then say, well, knowing that, which one do you think sounds best for you? Putting them in a position of power. I also think when you're talking about options, that really comes down to, and something you're brilliant at, again, Kevin, is the education component. Education in real estate or business is like wearing a tool belt. So if I come in and I have a big hammer, which we all have a hammer, that's called a low priced offer, right? And if it's low enough, people will give you money even if you're a deadbeat. So really that is like the absolute sledgehammer, just pound a low offer. But what about, do you have a screwdriver? Do you have a pair of pliers? Do you have a crescent wrench in your tool bag? Because those are all things that are different options for people that you still could help them with. And so I do think when it comes down to putting the people in charge and giving them that, though, you need that background in education. That's another success component. If you're not trying to better yourself or learn more, and I'm not saying you have to go into AI or do things that are like the flashy little object, but you should know the difference between, paying cash for a deal, a subject to, wholesaling, and how you can structure different components that could work for somebody. And if you don't, then you need to go back and learn those things, because that is offering more opportunity, which also will increase the odds of you getting deals if you offer them opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And just become their resource. Yeah, I mean that's
Exactly.
right. Because what was your tagline? If you think real estate, think Jeremy. Was that your
Oh man,
tagline?
that was really good. Think real estate, think Jeremy. I
I mean
I
that
mean,
just
let's be honest,
rhymes.
that
I
was
mean it just
really good.
goes just kind of.
I know I still have people that call me and they're like, "Man, I thought real estate, so I called you." So, I mean, it's timeless, Kevin. It's timeless.
I mean, how'd you come up with that?
I don't know. Anything good that I've done either came from my wife or God or both. So, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I probably actually have that card around here somewhere. I I think about it like how many business cards you've collected. Like I had a at the time my office manager. I made a binder and it was like of all business cards slid in. I'm like, do you even pass out cards anymore?
Not a ton. Occasionally people ask for a card and then I'm like, "What is that?" No. I do like there's actually a major benefit to doing like that, a virtual card or some component, because then you can typically say, what's the best number to text this to? Then you've got their, text, and it's a good conversation too to get all their information. So a little side note, and it also looks really professional because you can make the virtual cards, you can make them look amazing. You can put links to stuff. So I actually think that's a more applicable one. However, I do have cards, and usually I have to dig them out in the edges are all bent, and
Yep.
it looks like they're discolored from being in the sunlight in my car, stuff like that. But yeah, it's fun.
I was at an event and the guy gave me his card, like the in the wallet, like the last one, the one that rides like for 5 years, and he gave it to me,
Yeah.
and it like there's no corners, it's mostly rubbed off. I'm like, dude, that is like the worst good card. Like, you got to autograph that for me. I'll take it, right? But like, you got to sign that one. Like, hey, I did that. But so actually, at visiting my mom, like the little group of women there, they're like, "Do you have any cars?" I'm like, "I've got the shirt on. Just look at the shirt, right?"
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to say. Like, just look me up online. They're like, "Oh, honey, you need to carry some cards." I was like, yes, ma'am. I'll go get some. Like, she's like, Kevin, can you drop off 5 cards? I'm like, all right, I will. I'll go make them. Like, I'll go get these things. So,
Yeah, there are segments of the population, right, that do different things. And that's another thing. I always think you have to almost be a chameleon. If
I
you've
remember
got
that.
it, knowing your personality is good, and knowing other people is even better. So if you understand what they need, so talking to an 80-year-old, they're going to want a card, right? Talking to an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, they're going to be like, I don't even know what a business card is. So being adaptable, again, be the chameleon, because it's more important what you do for them so that you can help them. So be adaptable.
I remember that as your advice. But yeah, so I was at another event. They're like, all we have to do is just touch our phones and it'll switch on. I'm like, this is weird, man. Like phone kissing or something. I don't know what it is, but yeah, apparently you could like airdrop it over or something.
Yeah.
Sure, whatever. So Jeremy, you have been a coach. You've been this guy to many, many people. Highly influential mentor, coach. Like, you've have your fingerprints in lots of people, right? So if you're giving advice to a young entrepreneur, right, somebody breaking in or maybe having their first struggle, you don't know what you don't know yet. What
Mm-hmm.
advice would you have to somebody like that?
I think we all go through the process, and you know what? We have all been there, and we all go through a process. And hopefully that leads us to the longer game, because I mentioned, overworking yourself, things like that's a short game. I mean, you're going to burn yourself out. I am an enormous fan of knowing yourself well. So honestly, I would do a lot of personality tests, ask people who you are, what you're good at. That saying where people say, work on your weaknesses, that is total BS. Total BS. You work in your strengths. If you want the most success, you work in your strengths. I'd give you a prime example, like as NFL season is coming around the corner. Patrick Mahomes is not going to be the best linebacker. That he's just not, right? But he's playing in his strengths. So would it be worth him practicing, because he's not great at a linebacker, to practice being a linebacker? No. So professionals don't do that. Why would you as an individual do that? So that's why I think it's so important to know who you are, but you have to know that first, then go out to the open market and find somebody you can model and ask them how they did it. For my skill set, I'm very good at reading people, adapting, and on site coming up with solutions immediately. So I need to be face to face. AI isn't going to create crap for me. Having people cold call from the Philippines, my leads, that doesn't do anything for me, because that's not my strength. My strength is belly to belly, talking to somebody face to face. And if that ever goes away, where people don't want to talk face to face, then I am out of business permanently, because that is my skill set. So when you're younger, you're looking at everybody and you're saying, wow, Kevin does this. Brian Schroeder does that, Chad Wilson, whoever it is, I'm going to do that. But if you're not like them, then you won't have their success. And we never know, how they got there, what they actually had to do. If you know yourself well, though, and you're similar to like a Brian Schroeder, then you go meet with them, then you can adapt and model them. That would be my advice. So don't think that not everything's perfect for you. Sometimes you have a square hole and you've got a round peg and it doesn't fit. It just won't fit. And that's okay. Be okay with that.
Dude, set yourself up for success, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not great at paperwork. Great. I also could speak in front of a lot of people. Like, I need to do what I can do, and I can
Yeah.
hire or supplement somebody doing the stuff that I'm a little bit sluggish on.
Yeah.
So, love it. Love it. Love it.
And I even say, like with you, man, your podcast is amazing and it is in your skill set, but not everybody can do a podcast. So, prime example, like you're in your skill set, right? You're doing what you're good at. Do what you are good at.
Uh, do you know Adam Droege? Uh,
I do. Yeah. I
Uh,
love
so
Adam.
he just had a clip out, and I'm like, he was at our event yesterday, and I was like, Adam, nice. That was a tight clip. Like you did well. You know, he was on camera walking people through it. He's like, oh, you could do that. I'm like, I can't. like I'm not comfortable in some of these environments, right? Like this is a conversation that happens to have a camera, but like just knowing that I'm
Yeah.
walking around with a camera, that is not my comfortable spot. But it is interesting the stuff that you overcome, you know, fear wise, right? Because your success is on the other side of facing your fears. But he's
Yeah.
just a natural in that side of it. And then watching him grow, he was actually on our panel. It was fantastic. And his
Oh,
story, man,
he is great.
he's had a lot of, I mean, he had his struggles, but then now he's able to have his success too. It's kind of
Yeah.
fun. So,
That's something too. I think when you're younger and just starting out, or when you're just starting out, people don't practice enough. You should be really freaking good at scripts, and you should adapt the scripts to your personality. But I'm telling you right now, if you practice those, like one of the number one fears, right, with when you go out and meet with somebody is like, well, sometimes it's like, what if they say yes? Right? That's a fear we have. What am I going to say? How do I respond to objections? Those are things you can practice. And the better you are, and let's be honest, when you're out practicing with your spouse or with other people and they're giving you bouncing things that you might come across in scenarios like saying, I'm not interested, how do you respond to that? That costs no money. When you go out and meet with somebody and you screw that up, that just costs you money, right? So the reality is, it's just like we mentioned the NFL. The Patrick Mahomes looks amazing, and every one of those plays he's practiced 1,000 times. You don't see that, but that's what he did. So the same thing with scripts and practicing. Be really good. It removes your fear, and it's going to get really what both of you guys want. Normally, when you go and meet with somebody, they want to sell a house, you want to buy a house. So again, you're a deal maker, not a deal breaker.
ooh, look at
That's
that.
fancy. I know. Yeah, that was a script I heard from somebody. I thought, man, that's great.
There's a
That's
little
great.
screen like it's your teleprompter is there.
Oh my gosh, no, it really is, because somebody told me that one time when I was negotiating with them, and I thought, man, that's brilliant. He said, listen, we're here to make a deal. We're not here to break a deal. I thought, man, that's a fantastic way. I use that a lot. When you get it,
Modeling,
like
right?
bump heads, you're like, listen, I'm not a deal breaker. I'm a deal maker. Let's make something work.
That's awesome. You got me thinking. You ever read Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference?
Yeah.
I wonder
Yes.
how we could slide that in there. You're like, hmm.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Great book.
so that was like kind of your advice going there. Now, in some of these iterations and kind of life in general, I mean, you've talked about your faith a lot, which is awesome, which is a huge component of my world, right? And it's one of those like you don't necessarily go out and carry the banner, but I think people understand your personality and they're like, oh, wait, you either have it or you don't, you know, and
Yeah.
there's more to it. But off subject there. But my question here is when you're going through your iterations or some of those forging times or just a time where you feel like you're taking it to the teeth, right? You know, gut checks, etc. Is there a book, a scripture, a poem, a thought, a mood? Like, is there a song? Is there something that you go to find your strength? Like that you just kind of tell yourself, like, hey, it's going to be okay. You know, is there that, you know, just do it of Michael Jordan on the wall? Like, what is it that you go to kind of re-engage you? Like, hey, it's okay. It says so right here. You know, Miley Cyrus said this. I'm okay. Like, what is a Jeremy Vlasich moment or kind of words there?
It's interesting you say that. I love and this is something new. I consider myself, and I have been a Christian for a while. But when you talk, a lot of people talk about the Bible, and they do scripture quotes, or they'll say something, and it's always taken out of context, 100% of the time. I'm not saying that it's not right for what was said. I'm just saying that is plucked right out of context and set over here. One of the things that I love is I had somebody explain the Bible to me. The Old Testament before Jesus, then you've got the Gospels, which talks about Jesus being here. Then you have mostly letters written by Paul, which is my favorite person in the entire Bible, talking about how to live as a Christian. When you break the Bible down like that, I love to. So I started doing it on my phone every morning. I just read roughly, maybe 5 or 10 minutes of scripture. And I like to go start in a book and end in that book so that I get the whole context. But there is no doubt in my mind, every time I read the Bible, there are answers in every page that I read. So, as much as I will tell you, one of the reasons I love Paul is because I feel like Paul could be, or I could have Paul's story, right? I was Saul. I was the one that was critical of Christians. I was the one that threw rocks at them. I was the one that hated Christians, right? And that is his story. And he was named Saul at that point. God hit him with blindness, knocked him off a horse and said, that's not the path for you. And I feel like God did that for me a few years ago. And actually it's a total different story, but it's a somewhat of a prophetic gifting where he was showing me things that happened in the future. And that is straight out of scripture. That's a gift out of that. Why would he give it to me? I have no idea, because I am Saul, and I'm thinking, why, most of my family is not a Christian, so I wasn't raised in this. So I'm more that kid in the candy store when it comes to Christianity and the Bible and everything. And when I see somebody out in the world and they say, oh man, that person is whatever, that was me. I've been every one of those. I've been the greatest person. I've been the worst person. I've been everything in between. I look at Paul and what he wrote. My favorite books are First and Second Corinthians. I like First Corinthians probably first, but I could read that entire thing, and that basically tells you. And again, this is telling you how to live as a Christian. Paul is saying this is how to live as a Christian. I absolutely love it. And here's the most devastating part, Kevin. I fall short every day. I mean, I think so far I probably fell short a couple times today. But what that redeeming factor that God gives you is the reason and what inspires me. You asked me what inspires me. The fact that God could use me to help his people here on earth. That is how I can get up and do the things that I do every day, because it's all about God gave me a gift. I mean, he gave me a complete gift. And, we can turn on that gift or we can embrace it. And I do my best to embrace it. Trust me, I fall short. I'm not going to talk about how everything's perfect, because I'm still, there's a little bit of Saul still in me. I haven't converted completely to Paul, but that would be my resource, is reading the whole context of the Bible and thinking more about my life from a godly perspective, what gifts he's given me, and how he actually invites me to help his people on earth.
Dude, that's great. Good job, Jeremy.
Probably weird to say on a real estate podcast, I'm sure, but it's my
But here's
life.
the thing. Like, what do you think you're going to get more like fingerprints of somebody's life in, right? Some
Yeah.
canned speech, or basically like, hey, this is what I actually do. Welcome to real life. I like Corinthians. What's
Yeah.
funny is you have all this Paul stuff, and I'm like he is this like superhero, right? I'm a Proverbs guy. Like that's what I
Oh,
love.
I like Proverbs. Yeah.
I love the stories of Joshua and Moses. Like I love the stories of Genesis. Like I just like stories. Like
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
about Joseph. Tell me about Joshua doing this and this. Judges. I'm a big fan. It's just I like hearing the history and the stories of people. So it is it.
I,
Yeah.
I
Uh,
do think Ecclesiastes too is a fantastic short book in the Bible that was written by King Solomon. So you've got the way Proverbs is set up, it kind of, you see that in that book as well, how there's statements in there. You're just like, man, that is an awesome statement. But if you're a real estate investor or you're a business owner and you think highly of yourself, read that book of the Bible. It is an amazing book, and it is sound wisdom from one of the smartest men that has ever lived.
Totally agree there. So now, Jeremy, what is Jeremy doing now? Because you've kind of grown up here. Like, what is your next steps? What does the future look like
Yeah.
for
Well,
Jeremy?
I've got a hat, 1031 exchange.
What?
You know what? It's interesting. I love, one thing that I do enjoy is just being open to paths that God will lead you down. I mean, right now I am doing this actually with you on a farm in Southwest Missouri. This has been a goal for a long period of time. We did use real estate to get to this goal. And one of the things that I've really thought about is how can I help people now? And early on, I was in a certain spot. You mentioned about people that when they're early on. Well, now I feel like I can maybe help the people that have been down the path of real estate for 10 or 15 or 20 years. Because what is the end game? That would be my question to every person that is listening to that. What is your end game? And for me, real estate was not my end game. We mentioned Brian Schroeder. That's his end game. He loves it. He thinks about it 24/7 and it energizes him.
Yeah, it
Well,
does.
my end game was not to own 100, properties in a rental portfolio. That sounds amazing, but that just wasn't my end game. So now I do have my securities license. So I help people with doing 1031 exchanges and even taking portfolios or investment property that they've had and turning that into more of like a real estate pension, which is through different products like Delaware Statutory Trust. So that's something that I work a lot in. It allows people, one of the reasons I got into real estate was a freedom component. But if you have a massive business, often that freedom is not quite there. So this is a good way to show another avenue. It's not for everybody. Some people are like Brian Schroeder, but for me, it's a great resource. It's the end game. So that is what I am doing now, helping people come into the end game of their real estate career.
Can you explain what 10?
Oh yeah, 1031 is just a section in the IRS code that says you can tax defer your gains. So there's multiple gains when you sell a property you've owned for a while, which are capital gains, recapture depreciation. So the IRS wants their money unless you do a tax deferred exchange. So you would take that property value and you have to reinvest 100% of that value or more. So that is a section of the IRS code called 1031. So you're basically taking a property you're selling, you're doing a tax deferred exchange into a new property or into a DST or a product like that.
Awesome. So basically, it's a way that you wouldn't take it as living money, but you could take some profit and basically throw it into a future thing where you get either passive money or basically just defer taxes
Yeah,
until you can't
exactly.
defer anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I found a lot of people in this arena say, well, I don't want to pay the IRS this huge tax burden, but they still want to preserve like their tax stepped up basis when they pass away. So doing a DST, for example, takes a complicated portfolio. Let's say you do have 100 properties. If you sold those, you could stick that possibly in a little bit of a diversified DST because you want some diversification, but you might only be getting, one or two checks every month, just bam, right in your checking account. No management, no headaches. It's a very streamlined process. It really is more of what we all thought rental property would be, right? Hands off. I'm not going to clean toilets. Everybody will pay on time.
Yeah.
I won't have to get that phone call at 2 a.m. Those things are taken off your plate so that you can get back to one of the reasons I think people get in real estate is the freedom.
Awesome. Jeremy, if somebody want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
You know what? I'm old school. I like when talking to people, you can text me, but I also like talking to people. So my number is 417-459 7939. Again, 417-459-7939. Even if you just want to chat or if you have a question for me, I'd love to help out. But it will only be with a servant's heart. Kevin. That's the only prereq.
Done.
And if you need real estate coaching, you should definitely go to Kevin. Kevin, you are the stat at that. I really mean that.
That's awesome. Hey, Jeremy, it's great to have you on. Thank you for kind of sharing your story, your life, and especially your faith with us as we go into this, I guess, this fall season, right? So awesome. Great to have you, Jeremy. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you guys soon. Talk about a great conversation. Jeremy is just a good guy. He really gave me a lot of props, which is kind of fun. But a lot of it goes back to him, right? Because a lot of his fingerprint and his methodology are things that I either learned or he showed me that I kind of grew from. So, talk about modeling. He was one of the guys that I modeled my pitch and my style from. So thank you, Jeremy. Full of quotes. Let's go back on some of these. If you work for someone else and you're good, you're underpaid. If you work for yourself, you get paid for what you're worth. I thought that was a good quote. You can't sell a listing you don't have. I mean, that's solid. And think of the advice that guy told him, right? You think you did all this? You can't even hold in your own shit. Like, what a great quote. Because it's true. We don't really have mastery over our own body, our own actions, things like that. I have a cool way of looking at it. Very memorable as far as that's concerned. And then also, let's end with, I'm a deal maker, not a deal breaker. I don't know if that's an accent there. I'm a deal maker, but not a deal breaker. So that's cool. That's cool. Jeremy, great having a conversation with you. And great just hearing your story, what you're doing. And living in a farm in frickin' southwestern Missouri. Like that's pretty awesome. So we'll visit you next time we're down in the Branson area. So cool. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. And we'll talk soon.